Our speaker today is somebody who we know and love, and who we've seen up here a number of times do the inspirational reading and been quite touched by. And I know that a number of you have expressed that. And so she is going to, and she's also an author, I should say. She has a number of published writings in a magazine, I think, amongst other things. And so, as you might have gathered from the last song, we're going to be hitting about communication, okay? So here is Ruth Jackson.
Just in case I need to perch on this. I thought I had invented a new word, munication. I've been using it in my head for many years under the appropriate circumstances. But for the purpose of this talk, I thought I better look it up and see if it's a real word. I found it in the Urban Dictionary. I'm not hot for the first definition. Speaking in such bizarre slang that no one understands what you're saying. I do like this part. Derived from communication without the co-prefix that implies an interaction. Or, I like this one, speaking just to make noise. Of course, we all know the word communication, and hopefully we know its meaning, but I looked it up in the Oxford Dictionary and it was there. The imparting or exchanging of information or news. There's 4 main types of communication: verbal, nonverbal, visual, and written communication. And I'm going to include conceptual under nonverbal, and we'll explore that a little bit more in a minute. We're going to talk about communication with people, communication with God, probably not a thought you've thought before, communication with people, and communication with God. And I'll use the word God because that's what I'm going to do. You can substitute spirit or great spirit or mother, father, God, or your favorite label for that reality. God, Jesus, Father are the words left in my head from my Baptist Methodist upbringing, but I use them interchangeably with spirit or God. Communication, this is my definition. One-way sharing of information that stays at a superficial level and benefits neither the speaker nor the listener. You've heard it, right? And my version of communication is the imparting or exchanging of information or news that results in a further understanding and a compassion for each other. We each have our favorite kind of communication. You may not be aware of it, but you do. Verbal, we all use verbal communication. For some of us, it's not our preferred mode, like standing up here talking. Verbal is not just face-to-face, but any input we get through our ears. Nonverbal, which is often described as body language, or ways we convey information to others without using voice. I'll include under this category sign language, because I love sign language. Although it should also be included under visual. Sign language should be under visual, because if you're deaf, all of your language comes in through your eyes. I also include conceptual under nonverbal. And visual, all the information we take to our brain through our eyes. That includes looking at our environment, watching television or movies, and reading. And written communication, if you haven't figured it out, that's my favorite. Like an old-fashioned letter, or writing an article in a paper or a magazine, or writing a book, or in current day terms, email or blog. So what's your favorite mode of communication? Do you already know? Say you had a friend, but you haven't been in touch for years. Would you reach for the phone? Would you write them a letter? Would you hop in the car and go see them face to face? That might give you a hint on what kind of communication you use. It's good to pay attention. So attention is the theme for this month, so I stuck it in here. It's good to pay attention to another person's mode of communication and give honor to it. Maybe you're not a written communication kind of person, but your friend is. So honor them by responding to their written letter in writing. Now I'm going to talk about sign language. It fascinates me because we can convey concepts without saying a word. So I'm going to show you some signs. Actually, I'm going to have you guess. What do you think house? A sign for house. Close. Meh. Peggy's got it. So a roof and walls. Can you do it? Roof and walls, that's a house. Okay. Person, you like touch your shoulders and like this is your person. Okay. Car, what do you think car is? Everybody's got that, yeah, car. And airplane, you probably don't know that one. So pinky finger, pointer finger, and thumb. Yeah, and you can take off, you can have turbulence, you can land with your airplane. Now, two of those signs have what they call a classifier. So because it's hard in a story with movement to say person, and then the person went over here, and then the person went over there, that's hard. So you have a classifier, this becomes the person. So the person can move and do all kinds of things. And the other one is car, because it's kind of hard to say, and then the car went up the mountain, So you do thumb up, pointer finger, middle finger, and that's your car. And your car can go fast, your car can go over a speed bump, your car can park, car can do all kinds of things. Okay. So I'm going to have you do a little story. I'm going to show you an example first. I'll have you do it with me so you feel comfortable with sign language. It's going to be really short, like a little 30-second thing. But before we do it, here's your stage. This is the area where your story is going to be told. And you decide where your house is going to be on that stage. So it might be over here, might be over here, might be up on the mountain, wherever you want to put your house. Then you don't have to keep saying house over and over because your brain already knows that's where the house is. So if you park your car in front of your house, because you don't have to say house and car, the house is already there. Your brain already knows the house is there. So, okay, so let's do, so somebody tell me what you saw.
You walked to the airport.
Well, you came out of your house, got in your car, went up a hill or a mountain, you got out, and you saw an airplane going over. Okay? Yeah, the person was seeing it. That's your person. Yeah, so the person got out and looked up and saw the airplane. So you're going to tell a little story to the person next to you. And you're going to sign it, and then they're going to say what they saw, and then you're going to switch. Let's see if you can just do that. If you can't just do that, we'll practice again. Now. With those little signs, with house, person, airplane, and car. Car is this way. Thumb up. Your thumb is up. Yeah. Car. And airplane is up here. Mm-hmm. Okay, did everybody try it? Was the other person able to understand pretty much what you were saying? Kind of amazing how much you can convey without saying a word. It's all concepts. Okay, back up here again. Stop playing with your hands. Okay, so hang on to the idea of concept for a minute. Oh, actually, I have one more thing to say. Don't think about an airplane. So are you thinking about this? I mean, personally, I'm thinking about an Alaska airline with the Eskimo on the tail because it's going to take me to Alaska in June. But you could be thinking about a biplane or a jet or anything. But you're all thinking about an airplane, right? Yeah, I said don't think about an airplane. Is anybody so evolved, Reverend Brian, that they didn't think about an airplane? Because your brain just took in that concept. It took in airplane. It didn't take in don't. So hold on to that for a minute, and we're going to dive a little deeper into communication with people. So of course there's times when communication's okay. Somebody walks by, they say what time it is, you go 10:30, they walk on. Not a big deep conversation, but it was okay. In fact, it might almost qualify for communication because some information was imparted. And communication sometimes leads to communication. So you start with, oh, what a nice tie, and then that might start a conversation. So I'm not against communication. I just think we have too much of it. Communication is saying sit to your cat, because it's not going to happen. Communication is when you ask your teenager to take out the trash. Now that could be communication. If you say, honey, would you take out the trash? And honey says, yeah, mom, I will. But does it happen? It's the same as talking to the cat, right? Speaking just to make noise, as the definition went. Communication is when someone talks at you, not with you. Ever had a long phone conversation, and when it was over, a friend says, what was that all about? And you honestly reply, nothing. 45 minutes of nothing. Yeah, it's my brother. Don't be watching. Communication is when a parent says to a child, if you do that one more time, I'm gonna, whatever it is they say they're gonna do. And then the child does it again and again and again, and nothing ever happens. It's communication. Communication is when we say, how are you? But we really don't want to know. You're supposed to say fine, and you're supposed to say, how are you? And you say fine, and you go on your merry way. That's communication. Perfect example of communication is the automated phone system. So your doctor says, you need to take this medication twice a day, not once a day. So you call the pharmacy about a new prescription, but it's an automated phone system. And it says, do you want to renew your prescription? If you say yes, they're going to renew it at once a day, right? If you say no, they're going to say, thank you, goodbye. And you're going to be screaming, I want to speak to the pharmacist. I want to speak to a human being. And then you give up because it's just communication. There is no two-way communication there. And communication is when someone obviously wants to take a subject deeper and you divert to avoid it. My sister is deathly ill. Oh, I was thinking about going to the movies later today. What? But it happens. And then yesterday I had an experience on the computer where communication happens all the time. I was looking at the princess.com site, and I wanted to pick an excursion. I wanted to pay for it. And then the thing popped up on the screen, and it said, an unexpected response condition code has been received. What? An unexpected response condition code has been received. Does that mean I shouldn't do this and give them my credit card because I don't know what this means? So I called Princess, and they're like, we don't know. Complete communication. Okay, communication with God. I think that all the things we're discussing about communication with people applies to our communication with God, or our communication with God. And what came to me first when I was thinking about this was, now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. This is what we teach a 5-year-old. It's kind of gruesome. And I don't know why when I was 5 years old, I didn't say, Mommy, what does that mean if I should die before I wake? You just rotely, Mom says, do it, you do it, And I'm not against prayer, and I'm not against prayer with little kids, but let's come up with a kinder little prayer. Because I don't see that as communication with God. I see it as communication. It's repetitive, it's ritualistic, pretty meaningless, and a little scary. And communication with God is when you only pray when you're in trouble, or very sick, or facing a crisis. And the rest of the time, there's no communication. Communication with people. Communication is when the child you're teaching says they don't want lunch. And you have a little conversation with them. And you find out it's not that they're not hungry, it's that they have no money. And then the more you talk about it, you find out they've been living in the car with their mom for a month. And then you go a little deeper and you find out more about it. And the trick is to not just listen, but to do something about it. You hear and you act. That's communication. Communication is my late husband's best friend, who used to call every couple of months, how are you doing? And then we wind up on the phone for a pretty long period of time telling stories about him. And he'd tell stories, I'd tell stories, we'd tell the same story over and over, but it was healing to my heart and healing to his heart, and that's communication. Communication is when you've known someone long enough, guilty, to know their name, but you can't think of it. So communication is saying, I'm sorry, I can't think of your name. And then they say their name, and then you have a conversation. Instead of walking away thinking, well, I don't know their name, so I'm not going to talk about it and talk to them. Okay. In Keep Your Love On, the author Danny Silk advises that you know yourself. He says only those who value and understand themselves can value and understand others. Only those who can communicate honestly with themselves can communicate honestly with others. So spend time reflecting on your own life and resolving your own problems so you can be more effectively available to others. Sounds like the shadow work from last month. In 4 Essential Keys to Effective Communication, the author Bento C. Leal III tells of at least 7 ways we block active listening. Mind reading. You already know what they're going to say. Rehearsing, thinking only of what you're going to say next and not really listening to what they're saying. Filtering, hearing only the part you want to hear and not hearing the rest of it. Daydreaming, not being there at all. Advising, stopping the person who's talking to tell them how to solve their problem. Judging, you got that all wrong. And condescending, that's nothing. You ought to hear what happened to me. So it might be advisable to pay attention, to be conscious of your level of engagement when you're listening to another person. It's hard to not be preparing for what you're going to say next, but try to just listen. Usually words come to you if you just listen. Communication with God. Let's go back to conveying concepts like we did with the house and the airplane and the person and the car. Let's think again about the airplane I told you not to think about. I believe a powerful prayer doesn't need words. I think it could be a concept. You don't see the concept with your eyes, you see it like you saw that airplane. It's somewhere in your head. Communication with God includes listening to that still small voice. We heard that this morning in one of our things that was being said. That's God speaking to you. When you're completely intent on saying something, but your gut kind of says, no, and you listen to it, that's God speaking to you. Or the opposite of that, you're kind of nervous about saying something, but that little feeling says, go ahead, say it. What's the worst that could happen? And so you say it. That's still God talking to you. I have an example of communication with God, personal example. First, I'd like to say that as a child, I had a natural communication with God. I felt a presence, a sense of security. My prayers that were just inside my head, or if they were verbal, they were just with me. Reverend Brian can attest, I still don't do prayers out loud in front of people. It's too scary. I'll do this, but I won't say a prayer out loud. Go figure. But I lost that feeling of closeness in my teen years and young adult years. I regained it to a certain degree in my 30s. Don't know why. So one day I was driving down the main street of Newhall, California, and a thought came to me. It's not a thought I would usually think. It said, are you ready for some big changes in your life? I was surprised by the thought. It wasn't like in the train of thought of what I was thinking at the time. It felt like it just kind of came in from outside of me. If it was a thought I was thinking, I might have said, I'm ready for some big changes. But that's not what it was. Are you ready for some big changes in your life? Well, things had been just kind of coasting along, so in my head I said, well, I guess so. I wasn't thinking major changes, just maybe open for something new to happen. Within a few months, I had a serious disability, I had lost my job, and I was in the middle of a divorce. I looked back at that moment and wondered what would have happened if I'd said, nope, I'm good. Although I couldn't see it in the midst of my life-changing storm, there were good things ahead. And if I had not gone through those changes, I wouldn't be who I am today. In the years that followed, I remarried a man much more compatible to the person I'd become. I found a new job that made all those years of college worthwhile. Eventually, I got the job that gave me a good retirement and good medical insurance. And I thank God at least once a month when that check comes in for putting me through those changes, because I got to a rainbow at the other end of the storm. And one more short story about listening to the still small voice within. Since I moved up here about more than 20 years ago, more than 25 years ago, I've gone up and down 101 1,000 times. But every once in a while I get this little urge to take off on Thompson Road, but I didn't do it for years. Finally one day I did take it, but I went east, and I'm like, okay, God, it's pretty. Why are you sending me down this path? I don't know. So then 100 more times I went past thinking I should turn down there, but I didn't. And about 4 years ago, I saw an ad in a paper about Unity 5 Cities. I didn't come, but I cut it out and I put it on the refrigerator. And then more months went by. And then I heard that Gail McNeely was going to be performing. I think it was one of the summer concerts. And I thought, well, I'd like to go see Gail. And I've been wanting to go to that church anyway. So I went. What road do I have to turn to get here? Thompson Road, Thompson Los Barros to get here. So God had been whispering for 20-something years. And I finally went, oh, I get it. So pay attention to the nudges and whispers that you get, the little, things that tell you to try this, because they'll turn out to be a good thing. Not long ago, Kathy Bornino spoke about integrating all senses into your prayers. In her book, Armchair Travel to Heal the Planet, Kathy states, the power of images or concepts transcends mere words. We instinctively recognize this, but we're just beginning to understand the mystery. When talking about choosing your image or concept, Kathy stated, with your knowledge of a troubled situation, move into a stance of compassion and non-judgment and select appropriate imagery or a concept. So my concept has been a big red blood cell. Without going into my health history, that's what I envision. Sometimes out here, sometimes just in here. It's kind of easy because you could do it at a red light. You can just stop at a red light and have this little concept. I want a big red blood cell that's all full of oxygen and nutrients, and it's going through my body and it's doing what it's supposed to do. And, without those words, take back those words, just the concept. And I don't use a bunch of words, and I don't use don't. I don't use don't. Just like when we said, don't think about the airplane. So a conceptual prayer is envisioning yourself. Well, let me go back a little bit. A conceptual prayer is not, I don't want to be sick. Conceptual prayer is you envisioning yourself healthy and strong and engaging in an activity that makes you happy. For me, that's walking through a forest. First of all, being able to walk through the forest and being in the forest. So I was thinking today when we did I Come to the Garden Alone, maybe we should have done I Come to the Forest Alone while the dew is still on the redwoods. So I think adding a concept prayer to your prayer routine could be valuable. Light a scented candle. Focus lightly on a picture in line with your concept. See what happens. See your new home. Reach for the doorknob for that new home. See your new office. See that corner office on the 4th floor that looks out over everything. Be at a book signing for the book you just wrote. Whatever it is, have a little concept of it. And I'm not saying concept is the only way to communicate with God. If you're a verbal person, use your words. If you're an artist, paint a picture. If you're a written communication person, write a poem or write out your prayer. And in conclusion, pay attention. Pay attention to your mode of communication and aware of how others best communicate. Be aware of your conversations with God. Have as many two-way conversations as you can. When you leave church today, think, was I just there? Or did I communicate? Did I meet somebody new? Did I learn something new about somebody I know already? Was my conversation with God a two-way street? Strive for communication and reduce communication. Amen. No chair. Yeah.